Well, it's coming in. You mentioned those 600 trucks that are crossing into Gaza every day. I know yesterday a lot of the trucks had ready-made meals to be distributed to people throughout Gaza. But talking to experts and aid workers on the ground, they really say it's still not enough. There's so much need there. And one of the places where the need is most critical is in the north, where officials say famine is imminent, but it's just really hard to get those trucks up there. Think about the rubble, the destruction that has taken place in Gaza over the last 15 months. Many roads are not traversable and not with these massive aid trucks that you see lined up at the border. And so that's a big challenge for aid groups in terms of distributing the aid. But as you've seen and as we've mentioned, the aid is flowing. It's just getting it in and getting it distributed that remains the challenge at this moment.
So we heard from President Trump, who didn't seem all that optimistic, enthusiastic that a ceasefire would hold. Give us a sense of the feeling there where you are. How much confidence is there that this ceasefire will see through its 3 stages?
I think many people here in Israel feel the same way as President Trump in that trepidation of whether this fragile ceasefire can hold. And let's remember, it is fragile. The language of this first phase, which is set to last 6 weeks and see Palestinian prisoners released and Israeli hostages released as well. The language is so vague that this was the way that they could agree to this ceasefire. But there are still those really important points. Where do IDF troops withdraw to? Does Israel declare an end to this war? Israel wants to remain or maintain some sort of control over the Philadelphia corridor. This is the border essentially in Rafah with Egypt. Hamas does not want that. And so there are so many critical things that need to be sorted out, and that this ceasefire really could crumble, perhaps not in the first phase, but once the 6-week initial ceasefire is over, that's when it becomes a permanent ceasefire, and that's when those tricky conversations need to happen. And so there is trepidation that this is only going to be brief. There is a lot of worry among family members of the hostages that are still in Gaza that it won't last long enough for their loved ones to come home. Because remember, this is a staggered release of hostages, them being released every Saturday over, a 6-week period. And so if the ceasefire crumbles at any point, those hostages are not going to come home. And if it doesn't get to that next phase, only 33 will have come home. And remember, nearly 100 remain still in Gaza.
All right, Heather, and just a quick note on that. Who is in that next set, that next round of hostages that are meant to be released this weekend?
So that release, Marcia, is going to be on Saturday, and we don't know. As part of the agreement, Hamas has to give those names over to Israel before the, in the day before that release is going to happen. And so we didn't find out the names of the 3 women that were released on Sunday, and it was late. That's really what delayed the beginning of the ceasefire, getting those names. And so we anticipate that those names will be handed over in the early hours of Saturday morning. Usually they're released to the public around midday, and then that release will happen no earlier than 4 p.m. If it's any indication what happened on Sunday, they might be released at around 5 p.m. But again, nobody knows at what point. And once those hostages are released from Gaza, that's when the prisoners will start being released from the Israeli jails. And this is what's going to play out over the next 5.5 weeks. And it's really hard for people here to continue having to watch and wait and see who's coming home and who is not.